Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Instant Insights podcast, a global data strategic intelligence. We track over 100 tech, industry, ESG, and macro themes impacting all major sectors. I'm your host today, Martina Raveni, and today we're joined by Lydik Grynfeltt, who is the founder of Mentat Partners, provided by HR Bridge Consulting. In this episode, we will look at why AI fails. We will look at what companies get wrong when implementing AI and how to take a people-first approach to technology. Welcome, Lydik. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really looking forward to this conversation. So you cover HR and AI as these two themes. So let's start off with an introduction to you and what HR Bridge Consulting does.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Martina. But before I answer that properly, I want to give your listeners two numbers to hold on to for the next 20 minutes, okay? I'm going to ask them to be a bit patient because I will give them later at the end the answer. The first number I'd like to give them is 70%. 70%. Why? Because the biggest strategy firms in the world, like BCG, McKinsey, Deloitte, they all agree that 70% of AI transformation is about people, about leadership, and about organization. But then what do? They sell you the other 30%. And I will explain what happens to the 70%.
Okay,
Mm?
okay.
And the second figure is or the second fact is the best employees. The ones you would most hate to lose are probably breaking your AI policy right now. And by the end of this conversation, I will tell you why that is the next best news you have heard all year. Anyway, now to your question. I keep the suspense. Yeah, so to answer your question, what about me? So basically, I've spent 28 years in the international HR transformation. I founded a company called HR Bridge Consulting in London, and we operate across London, Paris, and Amsterdam. I'm French, as you can hear. I cannot hide that. Our specialty is helping companies that work across borders and regulations to get their people strategy right. Think about the mergers, acquisitions, international expansion, the complex stuff where employment law and human psychology collide. That's where we are. We are not a technology company. We do not make any AI. There's nothing to sell about AI. But I use AI extensively in my own practice. And about the last 18 months ago, I started noticing something with every single client I spoke to, and that's where AI is. Every one of them was investing in AI, and every one of them was treating it as a technology project. But buying the tool, deploying the tool, and moving on, that was not just working. It's not just about that. So the tools worked fine. The people did not follow, and that is what made me build what I'm about to describe now.
That's really interesting. Thanks for the introduction. When we had a chat before ahead of this episode, I remember that you were telling me that most AI project fails.
Mhm.
My question for you now is, what is actually going wrong when companies implement AI? You said you start noticing in all your clients the same thing. So if you can expand a bit of this.
Yeah. Okay. Let me give you the numbers because actually they are striking. Um, BCG and McKinsey together confirmed one figure which is very important. 95% of generative AI pilots produce no measurable return on investment. So 95% of companies going to a project to get a return on investment don't have it. And that is a big, big failure.
Of course, yeah.
95% is not marginal. And here is the number I promised you is about the BCG group that published what they call the 10-20-70 rule. 10% basically of AI transformation effort should be to algorithms. Okay. 20% of that effort should be into technology and data. Okay. And the 70% are about people, processes, and culture. So every major consultancy agrees with this. McKinsey says it, Deloitte says it, Accenture says it. So in a project, that 10, 20, 70 rule works. So it's really interesting because 70% is people, process, and culture.
And this 70%, it's about people, and that's where you come into place and your company. You've recently launched the, tell me if I'm not wrong, AI People Corp to address these problems. What does this cover, and how do you envisage, how do you hope people to use it?
People Corp is really an investment that we've done. We started to build a framework here. It's called AI People Corp, like you would call a B Corp. You know, it's the B Corp, but about AI and people. When you go into AI, and we look at the dimension of people. So what we've done is we've created a framework where we measure different dimensions about the human AI readiness. So loads of companies say, are you AI ready? And it's all about your data, your system, your connections, your tools. Here, we are not talking about that. We are not talking about the AI readiness like that. We are talking about the human AI readiness. So we have 7 dimensions that we measure. We look, for example, the first main dimension is the strategic AI narrative. Basically, as the organization articulated why it is in and what that means for its people, which is key because is it understood, by your company? You want to know what your employees actually feel about that introduction of AI. Another thing which is a big topic is the governance and the social dialogue, particularly on the continental Europe. Consultation obligation, and you must tell your trade unions or your staff where you are heading to and what is the governance around that. Another dimension we assess is the operational integration. You want to be sure that your operations are really clear, but as well, if you are not missing anything like the shadow AI, and we'll talk about that later. Then we assess as well the skills and the capability of your staff. Are they able, do they have the capacity to take on board the tools and the new way of working? And finally, the ethical and sustainability framework. We want to be sure that behind that, the ethic is clear for the management. So what we do is we look at those 7 dimensions. They are absolutely not the normal type of AI assessment. We do this human AI assessment on a different angle. But after that, we look at that and we have 4 different maturity levels to see if you are at the aware, structured, deployed, or integrated level. But what is important is to do a diagnostic that's going to see where the risks are, because you can be mature on some dimensions and not mature enough on other dimensions. So AI People Corp for us is a free reference. We've launched that. We have a website called AIPeopleCorp.org, which is free to use. There is a methodology that we can give for free, which is to do that first assessment, and it helps companies to create the conversation as well. Is to go on social media and talk about that, or talk internally with their staff. We don't charge anything on that. We want it to become a standard, a reference that companies can use, and it can become, after a while, I hope it will become a benchmark as well. So the idea is to open the eyes and make companies aware of that. But behind that, the question is how do you progress on your path with AI? That is another story. It's just we trigger that conversation, at least internally, with AI People Corp.
That's really interesting that you address this angle, because so far has been quite overlooked. We covered in GlobalData AI ethics and regulation, and this is one of your dimensions that you consider in AI People Corp, but that's definitely a conversation that it starts arising in the C-suite, and it's very important because, as you said, there is on one side you can progress on the tech, but on the other side we are humans and we need to navigate the AI space, which is so new, even if it's some years now, but it's still so new in terms of technological development and the incorporation within the workflow of a company.
I think to go to that, I think you might have some examples around you in GlobalData, but we've seen three patterns repeating everywhere. The reasons why or how companies jump on AI, on board AI. There is a first pattern which is I call it the substitution trap. Is a company that decides that AI will replace people or reduce costs.
And you call it trap.
And I call it trap. I call it trap because Klarna, the payment company, which is a Nordic payment company, is famous for its technology, but as well the example. Unfortunately, they announced AI was doing the work of 700 customer service agents. They replaced them, and what followed was a quality that collapsed so severely that they had to reverse the course and start hiring again. So you can imagine the impact on the organization performance and as well reputation. And basically the lesson learned with Klarna was that you cannot subtract humans from a system that was designed around humans and expect the system to hold. So that is the first rule, substitution trap. Very important one. I want to remind you, there is a reference that I was not planning to talk about, but I have to. Geoffrey Hinton, 18 months ago, mentioned 5 phases of agentic AI, and we are at phase 2 at the moment. In spring 26, we are at phase 2. The next 3 phases will take us in 26 and 27. So he thinks that at the end of 27, we should be at phase 5, and the power of agentic AI will be so powerful that it will be able to replace anybody behind the computer. So the substitution trap is going to go bigger and bigger and bigger, because each new development of Anthropic or OpenAI will become so attractive to companies that during the next year and a half, there will be a massive attraction to replace people by AI.
Yeah.
But anyway, I go back to my example. There's the second pattern is the augmentation as a slogan. So the leadership announces in that example that AI will make everyone more productive. So they buy licenses, they send a company-wide email, and then they leave people to figure out how to work it without training, without workflow redesign, and no governance. So you buy it, and that should augment your staff. The result is that 29% of employees admit to actively sabotaging their company's AI strategy in those cases. Among the Generation Z, some studies show that 44% of them sabotage the project. So people are not resisting to resisting the technology. They are literally resisting the way it's been imposed to them. And it's really interesting because augmentation could be done, but it depends how you push it to people. The third pattern we see is the governance paralysis, which is basically the case where the leadership sets up a committee. The committee waits for regulation. The regulation is slow. Then, meanwhile, underneath the official governance structures, the employees are building their own AI capability without anyone knowing. They use shadow AI, shadow agentic AI. And I will come back to it because it's the most fascinating part of the whole story. But shadow AI is
critical, yeah.
critical. So yeah, I wanted to say yes. Companies go into AI, but with different angles, different reasons, and that's where it's very difficult when people talk about AI because it's a very fluid topic. Some companies have different rationale why they want to use AI because of their sector, because of the pressure from the investors, because of the way of working. Yeah, there's not one single story about how to introduce AI.
I agree. Companies now are so under pressure to prove that there is a return of investment of all the unprecedented amount of billions that they invested in AI in the recent couple of years. And interesting that you tell us the different types of error that basically a company can do, and that's important because when you as know what's the problem, you can also address it. Otherwise, you are lost. So I find it really fascinating this lot of information that you gave us, and from what I've just learned from you, I'm guessing that trying to understand which are these problems and how to address them, it's a conversation that needs or must happen at the C-suite level. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. It's because I had that idea that the question of how to address those patterns was to have the conversation prior any decision, and that's where I came with the idea to create Mentat Partners, and we are launching Mentat Partners this week. Mentat Partners behind AI People Corp is the second piece. Mentat Partners was set up with Guillaume Vigneron, who is an expert in France, in Paris, on AI. Um, and the logic is simple. When a company does the AI People Corp assessment and see the gaps, as I said earlier, the natural question is who can help us close them? And what we wanted is to have Mentat Partners to be that answer, of course. And what we do is all those seven dimensions are questions, and they must push the executive committee, the C-level, to answer those questions. And they are not tech questions. They are HR questions, legal questions, operation questions. They are strategic questions. And we are not deploying a tool here. The point here is to build the human readiness that makes the tools work properly. You've invested in the tool, and then if you want to be sure they are used properly, that's where we come. So bespoke, senior, close to the client. That's what we want to be. We deliberately don't productize because we cannot put the leadership alignment in a software box. We really try to take the decision making outside of the box. Is not a product on AI. It is a leadership and strategic decision made by human beings at the board level or at the XCOM level. And behind that, the science we have, Mentat Partners is supported by HR Bridge Consulting, which is the firm I set up 8 years ago. And there we have the credibility of having the European expertise and the understanding of how employment law, but as well management, leadership are working across different countries. And then we provide with that an ecosystem. AI People Corp creates the awareness and the diagnostic, the framework. Behind that, we have Mentat Partners that delivers the transformation advisory properly. And HR Bridge provides the institutional depth and the cross-border expertise that we can provide in different European countries. We don't pretend to work in Asia or America, but for Europe, we can cover several countries at the same time. And that's the firm that define the standards of AI People Corp. It's HR Bridge Consulting that built AI People Corp. But again, that ecosystem can start trigger that conversation for some companies who want or to help them really decide differently when they have AI and it's working properly and they need to change direction.
Thank you, Lydik. Now I would like to have a quick conversation about a theme that we've been covering in my team, which is basically trying to understand if people are happy and not ready, but like open to use AI. You mentioned a bit earlier, but yeah, I would like to explore more. So, from your experience, are businesses and people, let's say, eager to adopt AI, or are they reluctant?
A very good question, and it's almost a personal question. I think the answer is both. There is a fascination and a fear, and the coexistence is clear. They live at different levels of the organization as well. Let me talk about one thing, what I call the shadow AI. I think it's the most fascinating and underreported phenomenon in the business today. Basically, companies don't know that, lots of companies don't know that, but 80% of the employees use AI at work, and only 22% stick to the employer-approved tools. So that is in the UK specifically, 71% of the employees use unappropriated AI tools at work. So can you imagine? It's
Yeah.
massive. It's massive. So the average large company runs, without knowing it, probably already 37 AI agents in the statistics. A medium-sized company already has 37 AI agents working in the background without knowing it. And 53% of those agents are unmonitored. So the problem here is your workforce has built a parallel AI organization that your management cannot see and cannot govern, and increasingly cannot control it. And that is a problem that has as well a cost. IBM estimates that the shadow AI adds something like $600,000 on average data breach cost, sorry. So the problem here is that shadow AI has a cost for you, but very importantly, as I said, Geoffrey Hinton is announcing the next steps of AI, agentic AI, but the shadow agentic AI, which is coming and increasing for the next months, is going to be even more risky for companies. So now, here is the twist, and this is the promise I made at the beginning. The employees running shadow AI say, "Oh, that's bad. I don't like that. I don't want that to happen in my company." I promise to say they are your best people. And that I want to be provocative about that, because they have built real skills in prompt automation and in orchestrating AI agents. They did this on their own time with their own curiosity, and because your governance structure gave them no other option. You didn't help them not to do that. So banning the tools punishes the very talent you will need most when you eventually formalize your AI program. So the right response is not to punish those guys. It is to find them, recognize what they have built, and channel it into your formal strategy. So that is the best news a CEO can hear. Your AI program already exists, and you just have not found it yet. And it is not exactly where you thought it would be. So I gave you those two examples there, but the fear lives at the top and at the bottom in your company at every level. But at the top, a CEO who would use AI at home on the weekends is perfectly comfortable with it. And I'm sure there are lots of people who hear us who use Claude from Anthropic or OpenAI, etc. But that same CEO, responsible for 10,000 employees, could be terrified of the question that follows. What happens if I give AI to 10,000 people? I can use AI at weekend, but what happens if I give that to 10,000 people? So the equation is individual productivity is easy. Organizational transformation is very hard. So most companies have not made the leap from one to the other, and that leap is the 70% I'm talking about.
And talking about CEOs, if a CEO listening now, our conversation wanted to take one step tomorrow, what would you tell them?
Mm. Mm. I would tell them to ask themselves three questions. And that's easy. You can do that at the weekend or when after brushing your teeth in the morning. The first question is, does your leadership team have a shared narrative about what AI means for your people? Not your systems, your people. Does your leadership team have a shared narrative? Is it clear for them? Second question is, do you know what your employees are actually doing with AI today? Not what the policy says. No. What they actually do about the shadow AI and how good they are at it or not. Three is, if a board member asks you tomorrow, where are we on the human side of AI? could you give a structured answer? So those three questions are, to my point of view, the 70%. That is the promise I made at the beginning. The work that determines whether your AI investment creates value or creates just noise. So BCG, McKinsey, every major firm will tell you that the 70% of the work is people and organization, and they sell you technology. So we built AI People Corp as a framework for the 70% and Mentat Partners for the for the team to build that. But what about, now I go back to those employees breaking the rules. They are all your AI program. They are potentially your AI program. So they have already taught themselves prompting, etc. They will build a parallel AI capability underneath your governance structure. The question for every CEO is, do you find those people recognize what they have built and channeled it into your formal strategy? Or do you push them further underground and then pay a consultant to recreate the capability they already had?
Thank you so much, Lydik. It's been a very interesting and informative conversation. Thanks everyone for those instant insights. You can find out more about our global data reports, intelligence centers in the episode description, alongside the link to Mentat Partners. Thanks all for listening, and from us in Strategic Intelligence, see you next time.